look at a few of these news articles. This one I thought was pretty interesting. One thing as students, many students, my students don't know any programming and they want to learn some programming. And so it is interesting to know what the most important programming languages are. And thankfully, they don't change very much. So things like a college curriculum designed years ago is still pretty much relevant. Python is always way up towards the top. And I always recommend learning Python if you don't know any programming because it's the easiest and it's really quite useful. So if you don't know any programming, start with Python. Then Java's often the number one most important one to get jobs, but it's very difficult to do. And anyway, this time they said C++ is at the top. And then, yes, it's C, Java, Python, C++, C#, Visual Basic, JavaScript, PHP, R, and SQL. And I'm sort of pleased to see that we teach all these at City College except R. R is the only one of these I've never used. Makes me feel like I guess I really have to go learn R. Anyway, but if you just learn one of the top 3 or 4, that's a good, learn C or Java or Python. And if you haven't done anything, learn Python. But if you know any of these, once you know one, it's very easy to extend it to another because they all do essentially the same thing. Anyway, so this one's kind of cute. This crystal has 2 places a titanium atom can be, and it turns out that it has a 50% chance of being in each place and is quantum uncertain, and that causes it to have unusual thermal properties that they can measure. They've been theoretically predicted years ago, but they haven't had an actual material that demonstrated this property. But anyway, that one I think I'll skip. What I wanted to do was get a little closer to the stuff relative to the politics I'm about to talk about. So this is one of them. The United States under Trump has really taken to betraying our allies. We betrayed the Kurds completely. We've done this many times, even before Trump. The United States goes into another nation and gets involved in their local politics. We support one side, they work with us, then we just leave and they're left to die, to be killed because they are like, the other side hates them for working with the Americans and then the Americans just abandon them. And so we just did that to this Afghan pilot. He became legendary, he was public as an American supporter, and the US agreed to let him leave and come here, and Trump blocked it at the last minute, his gang, because of course they hate all immigrants coming in. So any foreigner shouldn't be allowed in, even a guy that's already working with us on our side, who has already burned all his bridges in his home country. So now he's in hiding, running from people trying to kill him. We've done this a lot. That's why, it's going to be mighty hard. And that's what they said when we betrayed the Kurds. They said, when we try to recruit local assets in countries, it's really hard to do when we keep betraying our friends and leaving them to die. Talking somebody into helping us would be only good if we had a better reputation. So as you probably know, we're going back into stay-at-home orders here. Anyway, Trump tried to end deferred action for childhood arrival. So people that were brought here without papers as infants are not allowed to have a path to citizenship, but he's been blocked on that by the courts. The courts are not letting him get away with that, which certainly seems merciful. Anyway, and now here's a bit about China. So China is the second person to have quantum supremacy. Google, about a year ago, claimed that they had achieved quantum supremacy, which means they had built a quantum computer which could do a calculation faster than any classical computer. And that turned out to be contested. There were people that claimed that the classical computer was not using the best algorithm and there was a better one. But anyway, here's the Chinese one. Now, the thing about these quantum computers is they are not general purpose. They're not like a digital computer that we're using that can run any program. You have to build the hardware to run one program. And if you want to run a different program, you have to build different hardware. So it's more like analog computers. Before there were digital computers, you would just build analog circuits that do one job. And if you wanted a different job done, you'd have to build a different circuit. So anyway, but this solves a certain problem having to do with light interfering. They run light through 100, they have 100 beams of light coming in, going through 300 beam splitters and 75 mirrors. So the light bounces off all these things and mixes up and then comes out 100 outputs. And that is a really difficult problem. And the quantum computer can solve that in 200 seconds, and simulating in a digital computer would take 2.5 billion years. So it's proof that your quantum computer can do a carefully chosen job faster than a normal computer. But of course, that doesn't mean you can just do anything fast, but it means certain things can be done fast. China also has a fusion reactor. They have a tokamak that's running. They call it the artificial sun. There are quite a few of these in different nations. These are probably the future of nuclear power. This is what would really help us. We were talking about this in a previous class. we are all suffering global warming from all the carbon in the air. And so the immediate cure is to build nuclear plants everywhere, but then you have all this radioactive waste that leaks out and poisons the water like Fukushima and stuff. So the real solution is to go to fusion plants, because fusion plants create much less dangerous waste. They produce tritium, and tritium has a half-life of 7 years. So you can just, that's not hard to get rid of. You can just hide it for like 50 years and then it's pretty much gone. Whereas this stuff you're doing now creates stuff that's like radioactive for like 100,000 years, and we don't have any way to store that kind of waste. Anyway, so that'd be good if they get that working. This one was more of our interaction with other countries, which is what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. But I did not realize this. There is a thing called the Muslim Pro app, which helps you arrange your religious schedule if you're a Muslim, and apparently was actually used by a lot of Muslims. And the US government wanted to spy on the Muslims, so they just bought the data. As you probably know, every app you use tracks everything you do, and then it sells it to advertisers. And that's in the terms of service. So the government just bought the data, which is probably completely illegal. It's not only religious discrimination, it's violating the Fourth Amendment, it's spying on people without their permission. But I hadn't thought of this as a brilliant way to get the data. They talk about ring people, letting people see your camera, but you could just buy the data from the app. And that's what they did. So anyway, they're now being taken to court by the ACLU, I think, and rightly so. This is just what you're not supposed to be able to do, spy on people without having probable cause that they're doing something bad. You're not allowed to just spy on everybody and then comb through the data looking for some excuse to arrest people. Anyway, I said I'm not going to introduce any more material from the textbook today. We're here at the last class of this cybersecurity responsibilities. And all I want to do today is talk about, maybe I forgot to update it on the web. Anyway, all I want to do is talk about America, US versus China, which is something I had a little lecture to talk about, and I'll answer any questions, then just take the final exam. And if you want to go to some guest lectures, there's a couple more coming. There is one coming on Monday, this coming Monday in 2 days, and another one coming on the Tuesday of a week after that. So come to these if you like for extra credit. These are be very good people to hear from. And let's talk about China, because this is a big deal. As you know, I mean, China is going to be the world's new superpower. In fact, you could argue they already are, especially under Trump. America has chosen to withdraw from the world stage, remove ourselves from partnerships, distance ourselves from our allies, withdraw our troops, and just sort of hide in our own borders as an isolationist way. And so as far as being a superpower controlling the world, we've pretty much resigned from that position. And China has vigorously stepped forward to be the superpower controlling the world. And when I went to Sri Lanka like a year ago, the guy said, as far as I'm concerned, China already rules the world. The United States has already fallen into second or third place. So anyway, I got this from a debate online of among experts, and it was Michael Pillsbury, who writes books about this and is considered quite an expert, and another person for the motion that they like the way Trump is treating China. That was their plan, that the Trump plan of being much more hostile towards China is a good thing. So that was their position. The alternative is these people, one from Harvard and one from Biden's national security advisor, saying that you shouldn't be mean to China the way Trump is mean to China. So here's the pro position. China is not becoming an open liberal state like America. It is a dictatorial type fascist state where you can't criticize the government and you don't really have much rights. And they're also stealing our stuff right and left, stealing our intellectual property like crazy, and advancing and developing cyber weapons. So, they say China is a threat and they are hostile to our way of life and they should be held back. That's the position of the hawks on China, which are the ones that govern most of the Trump administration's policy. And the opposing position is that we are not enemies with China. We're just competitors. We're doing business. We should encourage trade and business and such. And all we're doing is picking a fight we don't need to pick here. And so Jimmy says they blatantly ripped off Cisco. Oh, they absolutely did, yes. And the part where they said they're stealing our stuff, this is undeniable. They are absolutely stealing our intellectual property like crazy. They are hacking everybody, stealing all our stuff. As everybody knows, they encourage Americans to invest in China. And what happens is you go to China, they let you build a company, but they force you to hire local workers. The local workers steal all the stuff. Then they kick you out and make a Chinese knockoff. This happened to everybody. So all the Chinese internet companies are ripoffs of American companies. They rip off of Google, they rip off of Yahoo, they rip off of Amazon. That's all it is. And you know, they're very open about this. That was their improved China plan. So, you know, yeah, Jimmy has some details about the Cisco exploitation there, but that's why one thing about Cisco is Cisco found that like 80% of the tech support calls when people had broken Cisco routers, when they send them in, they're not Cisco routers. They're Chinese knockoff Cisco routers made out of inferior products with the Cisco branding on them, which if you buy cheap networking equipment, you're mostly getting Chinese knockoffs, just like people know purses and watches and everything are not genuine. That's why they're inferior copies that look good, but they're not really the same inside. So that's the point. That's why, you know, the hawks are mad about this. They say they're stealing our stuff. They're not paying royalty fees and so on. Of course, the Chinese say they are improving their economy. And why should they reinvent stuff when those decadent Americans have already invented it and they're holding it back just because they're greedy slobs and we are benefiting the world by getting this intellectual property to help our people? And they don't really believe in private property and capitalism and all that the way we're doing it over here. Anyway, that's the biggest, one of the big conflicts, such as it is. So anyway, everyone agrees that China is really important. Yeah, the Huawei, that's a very good question Jimmy puts up. Are the Huawei 5G repeaters security threats? Because as you know, we're blocking Huawei now. And Trump is saying Huawei is a security threat. Well, I don't know the answer. I do know that the cheap Chinese networking equipment is usually full of vulnerabilities. I've seen plenty of hacks to get in them, so that's one issue. But the thing that Trump has been pushing is that it actually has some kind of backdoor sending the data back to China, which is what America does. We've absolutely been exposed for doing that. The NSA in targeted attacks will put extra chips inside your Cisco routers and then deliver them to you so they are in fact spying on you. So that is possible and we do it. We've been caught doing it in targeted cases. And so it is absolutely true that if you buy networking equipment from China, it could have bugs in it. And how would you know? So you could say that we shouldn't use stuff from China, but the fact is we don't have any American industry worth a damn anymore. We don't make any chips. We don't make much of stuff. You can't build anything without all your stuff really being from China. All the chips inside all your products are really from China. So, you know, that now, my sister is big on saying we should just have American industry again. We should have our own chip industries and our own everything, build our own shoes and t-shirts and everything instead of doing it all in China. And that's one way to go. That's what Trump said he was going to do. That's why a lot of people supported Trump. He was going to actually revitalize American manufacturing. So he started making everything here instead of importing everything from China, but he didn't really do it. But anyway, that's certainly one possible way to go. But we have not done that, and nobody is seriously proposing to do that. Everyone is unable to would overcome the fact that it's incredibly much cheaper to import stuff from China than to build it here. One example of that is AOC. AOC had a T-shirt to promote her cause, and she had like a sweatshirt you could buy for like $50, and everybody freaked out. And she said, "Well, that's because I'm not willing to import it from China. We're getting people to work it here and get paid a living wage, so it costs a lot." Yeah, and it's the fundraiser for this cause that's worthy, and you pay a high price for it, and that's the way it's going to be. That's one way you could go, you know. But most people just want to have a cheaper price and not worry about the international consequences. Anyway, so China is really important. China is a huge market. Every American company has to either figure out how to expand into China or accept being a minor, unimportant company because the market in China is huge. American market is only 300 million people. The Chinese market is over 1 billion people. So you're number 2 if you're not in China. And so even Google expanded into China in 2005 or so. By 2010, China had hacked them and they got really mad and came home. And then they went back again because you just can't ignore China. It's too important. So anyway, one big issue is, of course, Taiwan. China has Taiwan, which is a separate nation, sort of. They want to be separate. China wants them not to be separate and considers them part of China. So what Henry Kissinger worked out under Nixon was the one China principle, where Taiwan will in fact be a separate nation from China, but we will tactfully never admit that. We will never discuss the Taiwan presidency or Taiwan government. We will treat them as if they were part of China. And then we will not embarrass you by exposing the fact that in fact they're a different nation. That has been the plan. This sort of insane, but this is less than preserve face in China. They do not have to officially admit that Taiwan is a different company. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, many people hated Kissinger. Yeah, absolutely. And Elder Thompson Lake was good fun about that. But Kissinger did accomplish this negotiation and many others. Much of the modern international world is based on the stuff that Kissinger and Nixon did. And a lot of people don't agree with it, but this was the situation. But then what's funny is Trump just blew it away just by being a clumsy slob. So part of the deal was we would never talk to Taiwan as a country. And then the president of Taiwan called Trump to congratulate him. And he just said, I just spoke for 8 minutes with the president of Taiwan, because the whole point about Trump is he doesn't know anything about government or diplomacy or anything. He just blurts out whatever comes to mind. So he was the typical rude, crass American, just blurting out the unmentionable insults. And so people wondered what would happen, but they didn't, like declare war on America or Taiwan or anything. But he did sort of blow away that delicately balanced, tactful situation. So anyway, the United States, China, there's a big issue of what China's going to do. China has promised that they were not going to militarize the islands, but they totally did it. They've done some expansion. They built up some usual military stuff that they didn't approve to, and they lie constantly. They totally deny that they're hacking American businesses when they absolutely, obviously are. And they just lie. And for a long time, the amazing thing is how brazen they are. They will just attack you right from an IP address without even a proxy, right from the college, the military college, training students, and they'll find videos of them in class. Now we're hacking American Bank. Let's do it right in here, right in class. They're showing them how to do it. And the attack comes in right from there. And then when you complain to China, they said, we never did that. We don't hack Americans. You're just lying. It's an amazing situation. They just brazenly lie. And before Trump, it used to be the case that American presidents could not brazenly lie like that. We had to have like a cover story. Now, Trump just brazenly lies all the time. So he's kind of imitating the Chinese model of information. But anyway, so it is certainly a very strange thing. And this is why the hawks get mad, because we talk about having a partnership with China and doing business with China and having companies with a branch here and a branch there. And yet China is just stealing stuff all day long, right and left, right in front of us. And they say, how can you do business with somebody when they don't play fair at all? But we totally are, and they totally are. And I understand the hawks get mad and say, this is crazy. You can't deal with people that act like this, but we are. And they don't seem inclined to change. So anyway, Trump takes a sharper-edged approach. He's trying to take a strong line against China, refuse to use their stuff, and it appears to have worked. Britain has now said they are not going to use the Chinese Huawei 5G anymore. Apparently, the American pressure was enough to pressure Britain into going along with it. So they're trying to get allies and everybody to be harder with China and try to force them into playing more fair. Now, by the way, I must say, none of these people say this, but I'm thinking it will probably naturally happen anyway, because the reason China did steal all this stuff from us is because we were ahead. And I don't think we're ahead anymore. So I think we're going to be less attractive target to steal stuff from. So I think it'll naturally burn out on its own, like a forest fire that quits when enough of the trees have burned. Anyway, so the allies, now, of course, one thing about Trump is that he's not just mean to China, he's mean to everybody. He insults Germany and Britain and Canada and Mexico and just everybody. He's just mean to all his friends, which is kind of counterproductive. And so, but people say that they welcome the hawkish attitude towards China from Trump, and they look forward to a future president who is less aggressive to our friends to help make a more proper alliance where we can still hopefully preserve the hostility towards China, but get along with the people that are actually our friends better. So we'll see what happens. But the theory of the hawks is that we need to punish China and make them suffer for their crimes. And that will hopefully deter their crimes. Anyway, and then of course the huge issue is immigration. As I'm sure you people know, a huge amount of Chinese immigrants come here. A lot of them come to San Francisco to go to our college, and they're often very good students and do very good work. And when I went to teach at DEF CON China, those people were very sharp, jumped right on the hard stuff like mathematics and the assembly language, and it's very impressive. So, I mean, I really like educational partnership with China. I like teaching there. I like teaching the Chinese students that come here. It's very impressive to me, and I'd really like to see more of that peaceful interaction, because I'd like to see us just sort of calm down and quit hating each other and blend into sort of a merged future. But a lot of people don't want to see that. And so, anyway, Trump, of course, was sort of crazy for this, like many other things. He cut our science and research budget while the Chinese are racing ahead. So, we're certainly much less competitive in any way compared to China than we used to be. And this is why, another thing to say is, why in the world are we importing 5G routers from China? Why can't we build our own 5G routers? What happened here? We used to be technological leaders. I remember like 6 years ago, I read that the modern cell phones they sell in Japan and South Korea, you can't get them here. We only get like the second-rate stuff because they can't sell the really good stuff here because we're so far behind. And for like 20 years, our broadband penetration has been terrible. Most of America doesn't even have 10 megabit per second internet. Whereas in South Korea and Japan, everybody's had like 100 megabit or gigabit for years. That's why they have these video game competitions in South Korea. And the guys that win those video games are like heroes, like football players here. And you can't even play those games here because they require a fast internet that we don't have. That's why it is a problem. The United States is letting these other nations get ahead, and the hawks are saying, well, they got there by stealing our stuff. And I say, well, maybe so, but now they're ahead. And why aren't we keeping up? And we're totally not. So one big way we've typically kept up is by immigration. All these people come in and bring in all this energy and strong family values and respect for education and stuff. So, I'm all for people immigrating here and getting educated and joining us, but the current president is very much against that. They want to lock the doors and not let anybody in. 10 years ago, Tavis Smiley and Prof. Cornel West went to China, and U.S. students were lazy, but they loved their cultural exports. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Most American students don't want to learn math. They don't want to study hard and read the book. Yes, if you take and do, that's the problem. In many ways, the Chinese culture makes their students learn more. So I know. That's why I think America benefits greatly from immigrants. But our current government has been very hostile to immigration, and many people see that as holding us back. And of course, alienate our allies. The United States pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We pulled out of the Paris Accord. Trump really wanted to pull out of NATO, and I know there's some talk that he might still do it before his administration ends. So the Germans don't trust us anymore. There's certainly many people see China as a better partner for their country than America, because America has a really bad international reputation under Trump. And the thing that, even if Biden gets in, I don't think, if I was a foreign country, I wouldn't trust America very much, because Trump might get back in. And if it's not Trump, it'll be one of his kids or another right-winger that will again close the borders and pump up the racism and lies. I think America is not a trustworthy ally anymore, because we have basically a right-wing nationalist Nazi-type party that's very strong here. So we are very likely to turn against our allies at any moment. And that is a problem. And so that's a problem with our image. They've talked about this. Does democracy look better or worse? Democracy is looking really bad. And now Trump, with his latest thing of lying and saying that our elections are all rigged, that has really harmed our image inside America and outside. Now everybody feels like, I remember some people from other countries are saying, this is just incredible watching your country. It's like the fall of the Roman Empire. Like everything America used to stand for, even just 10 years ago, seems to have collapsed. So it's, on the international stage, you could look at China and say, these guys are stable. We know what we're doing. They live up to their promises. And America are just crazy and they're collapsing. So it's, if you're another nation, you pretty much have to have a friendly relationship with one power or the other. And many of them are seeing China as a far better partner than America, which is a problem if you would like to see American democracy and free speech and stuff move forward. Anyway, that's why China is more respected than we are these days. And as far as our relations directly with China, the Chinese leaders are just baffled by Trump. They've said, we can't understand him. The Chinese leaders are very much like the Democratic leaders. They carefully plan everything they say. They choose their words carefully. They have long-range goals. And Trump just blurts out stupid things and then contradicts them the next day. And they're thinking, what's the plot here? He must have some reason to say that. And I know some of my Trump supporting friends say, oh, Trump is playing four-dimensional chess. Trump is just pretending to be an idiot. He's got a perfect plan. It's all making sense. And I don't think so. I think he just is a blundering fool. But anyway, if you try to make sense of what Trump's plan is and why did he say this crazy thing and then tweet the opposite and then change his mind the next day and then send his Secretary of State to say something different, they can't figure out what's going on. You know, they would like to understand what he wants and then figure out how to deal with him, and they can't figure it out. So it just finds him mystifying and confuses the people in Beijing. So they just don't know what to do. And for example, I think until recently, they had all these protests in Hong Kong and China didn't do anything about it because I think they were not sure what America would do. But then because of our election, it became clear that we couldn't care less what happens in any other country. We're busy having basically a civil war here. So then they realized, okay, we can just crush democracy in Hong Kong and America won't do anything, which is absolutely what happened. I might as well just take over Taiwan right now too. And I think all the other totalitarians and expansionists in the world might as well do whatever rotten thing they want to do now, because obviously America couldn't care less. With our incompetent handling of the coronavirus and our incompetent at managing our election, and the fact that half of our people don't even read real news, but they read science fiction fake news, I think we're clearly not there to police the world anymore, and we won't be for a while. So you can just do anything you want. Russia could just take over some more people like they did. Anyway, so another fun thing is Grindr. The Chinese bought Grindr in January of 2019. Grindr is the gay dating app. I don't really know why China bought it, but they bought it, and everybody freaked out and said they're going to have all this information about who's gay, and they can blackmail people for being gay, which is, I think, primarily a problem for Republicans. This keeps on happening. Republicans seem to have an enormous number of prominent figures that get there by saying they hate gay people and they're secretly gay. This happens over and over and over. So it is a big problem for them if some enemy has access to Grindr. And so they're going to force them to sell Grindr, and apparently they did. They were forced to sell. Trump tried to do this to TikTok too, for the same reason, saying that he'll know everything about our children by mining the TikTok data, and we have to have it owned by an American company. But Trump's traditional incompetence has held that back. He made a deadline, but then the deadline passed, and he extended the deadline, then the extended deadline passed. Last thing was Oracle was going to buy TikTok, but now it seems like it's not going to happen. It's, by the way, I think it's completely illegal for an American president to just order a company to sell to another company. That's sort of a violation of the free markets. But anyway, nobody ever got even to that argument but it is anyway, now we're going to live through a tumultuous period transitioning to a new president. And I think a lot of that, what's going on there, will be determined tomorrow when Trump goes to Georgia. We'll find out whether he burns down the Republican Party in Georgia or somehow revives it so the Republicans can win Georgia and get the Senate. And so, I mean, we're still living through a very tumultuous transfer of power here, and almost anything might still happen. The only thing that seems completely off the table now is Trump actually taking another term of the presidency. It seems like he's not going to manage to get any of his cases up to the Supreme Court. So he's just going to basically complain. But what will happen is Biden will get in there, and 30 or 40% of Americans will believe that he cheated to get there and refuse to cooperate with him. So that will affect the vaccine rollout and everything else. So, I think we're going to continue to have very troubled internal politics in America. So we will not have any attention to pay to other countries. So they can pretty much do whatever they want without any significant response from us for the foreseeable future. Anyway, that's what I wanted to show you. I'll stop this recording.